Okay, so today we're diving into something really fascinating. We've got this collection of supposedly true horror stories sent in from people in rural India. And these aren't just your typical spooky campfire tales, you know? They're like a direct window into a world of very specific fears and ancient beliefs that are still very much alive today. This source material itself kind of gives us our guiding principle with this quote: stories are born from stories. It just perfectly sets the stage for what we're about to explore. This whole tapestry of folklore where every single tale seems to build on the one before it. So let's be clear about our goal here. We're not trying to prove or disprove any of these stories. That's not the point. What we are going to do is analyze them for what they can tell us about modern Indian folklore. We're on the hunt for the common patterns, the shared fears, and the cultural beliefs that really shine through these, well, pretty chilling accounts. So, where do we even begin? Well, a great place to start is with the kind of entity people say they're running into. And that brings us right to our first major theme: these shape-shifting shadows that just seem to haunt every corner of these narratives. To really understand what's going on in these stories, you first have to know about the Chalawa. Think of it as a trickster demon or a shape-shifting entity that's a staple in Indian folklore. Its whole game, its main tactic, is deception. It shows up looking like something totally harmless or ordinary, all to lure its victims into a false sense of security. And what's absolutely fascinating is the sheer variety of forms this Chihuahua supposedly takes. I mean, look at this list. It could be a little white goat, a dog, a pig, a rabbit, all the way up to a massive cow-sized beast, or even just a tall man. This pattern of a seemingly innocent creature that suddenly turns monstrous is a recurring nightmare in these tales. And this slide just brilliantly illustrates the Chihuahua's whole strategy. So in one story, a woman finds this lone white goat kid. She thinks it's early morning and she's doing a good deed, right? But then the goat becomes unnaturally heavy, its legs start growing impossibly long, and she has this horrifying realization that it's actually 2 a.m. Then in another story, you have a guy who just asks for a cigarette. Seems normal, but as he leaves, the narrators see this huge hole in his back and smell this awful stench right before he completely transforms. It's all about the bait and switch. This brings up another key pattern, because it's not just about who you meet, it's about where you meet them. Turns out, certain places are consistently described as hot spots for these kinds of paranormal encounters. The locations themselves basically become characters in these stories. You see these themes over and over: lonely rural roads at night, isolated sugarcane fields, a specifically cursed peepal tree, and of course, homes with dark histories, whether it's haunted by a jinn or the lingering spirit of someone who lived there before. This sense of isolation is so important. It just cranks up the victim's feeling of helplessness and vulnerability. This one story is a perfect example of what happens when these supernatural boundaries get tested. So, a family moves into a house and they're explicitly warned, do not go into this one room. It's inhabited by a jinn. Well, the father is a skeptic and decides he's going to prove it's all nonsense. He deliberately sleeps in that forbidden room with a radio blasting at full volume. The consequence? It's immediate and it's violent. An invisible force physically throws both him and his bed right out of the room. Okay, so this is the big question, right? If you find yourself in one of these terrifying situations, how do you survive? Well, the stories offer a fascinating and surprisingly consistent toolkit of defenses. Across all these different accounts, a really clear pattern of protection starts to emerge. It's this potent mix of faith and simple physical deterrence. People will recite religious verses, they'll wear symbols like a Buddha locket, or chant a deity's name. But then you also see something as simple as fire and smoke being a really effective ward. And in some cases, it just comes down to pure willpower, a flat-out refusal to show any fear. And this is a fantastic, really specific example. There's this farmer who finds himself trapped in his sugarcane field all night long by a shapeshifter that just keeps changing form. So what's his unlikely survival tool? He chain smokes 2 packs of beedies, these small hand-rolled cigarettes. Apparently, the creature, whatever it was totally repulsed by the simple flame. It kept its distance, just enough for him to make it until sunrise. But here's the thing, not every story has a clear resolution or some dramatic escape. In fact, some of the most chilling encounters are the ones that are left unfinished, the ones that just linger with the sense of dread and a whole bunch of unanswered questions. For instance, one young man talks about having recurring sleep paralysis. He feels this immense weight on his chest. And at the same time, he hears cats fighting violently somewhere nearby, but he can't move, can't speak. His only defense is to mentally recite the Kalma, a religious verse, over and over until the presence finally leaves. It's this deeply personal and psychological battle he has to fight. And that leads us to what might be the most unsettling story in the whole collection. A man's older brother passes away. Weeks later, the man is sitting alone at night, and he sees his deceased brother just lying next to him. When he sits up in shock, the apparition sits up too, looks him right in the eye, and speaks these chilling words. "Babu, I am not dead." And then the apparition just vanished. Forever. The house was quiet after that, but the story doesn't end with an explanation. It ends with the narrator posing this question directly to the audience. Can any of you explain what really happened? And that's such a powerful way to end it, right? It turns the mystery over to us, and it reminds us that in folklore, sometimes the questions are way more important than the answers.